Happy to be back for another edition of Office Hours here on LinkedIn with the Orlando Magic. And I'm really excited to have my good friend Keith Hester from Chick-fil-A join us. Keith, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you, JT.
Good to see you as well, even if just virtually, right? I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, the world we're living in.
Absolutely. I'm definitely missing the interaction with people probably more than anything else.
I hear you. I'm with you on that. We were teasing earlier as we were talking about as a consumer, we always argue about what's our favorite menu item off of Chick-fil-A. That is such a passionate conversation. What's your answer to that? Are you allowed to have a favorite item?
We are allowed to have a favorite item. Favorite is probably the chicken sandwich. I still remember the first one I had in Haynes Mall in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, as a little kid. I mean, that was the only place that Chick-fil-A could be found at that point in time. But today, I'm pretty much across the menu. Strips, grilled nuggets. I'll choose a variety. I'm obviously eating a lot of Chick-fil-A, so the variety plays out well for me.
Love that. I'm a grilled chicken sandwich, guys. I think I mentioned earlier. Can't go wrong there. Can't go wrong. So tell us, for those that don't know you, Keith, give us some background in your role with Chick-fil-A.
So my role at Chick-fil-A is leading national partnership strategy, which also trickles down to our market level partnerships. And so Chick-fil-A Inc., is very well known for its investment and place in college football with the college football playoffs. We've been a longstanding partner in college football for many, many years. And then at the market level, our franchisees are involved in a number of property partnerships. For instance, the Orlando Magic has been a partner with the Orlando franchisees for many, many years. And so that's kind of the two-tiered structure that we have, and it's how partnerships are allocated.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And how about prior to Chick-fil-A? Obviously, you've been in the sports world and wasn't always on the restaurant brand side.
So just prior to Chick-fil-A, I spent several years with the Tiger Woods Foundation, working primarily on corporate partnerships. They had a very event-focused mentality in terms of the way that they went about raising funds. And so we were involved with events like Tiger Jam in Las Vegas. That was a fundraiser for the foundation, the Deutsche Bank Championship in Boston. And then all those funds rolled up to a significant project of which I'm incredibly proud to have been a part of, and that's the Tiger Woods Learning Center based in Anaheim, California. And it was such a great project because it was positioning educational resources in Tiger Woods, backyard and his neighborhood, in the area in which he grew up. And today that facility is serving about 8,000 youth in the Anaheim area.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Well, go back. You touched on a little bit the structure and somewhat the different verticals on the sports marketing side at Chick-fil-A. But generally speaking, what is the vision for Chick-fil-A? When you look for a partnership or you enter into a relationship with a sports property, what are you looking to do?
Well, from our perspective, it's typically audience led. What's the target demo? Who's the audience that we're trying to reach? And then we try to find, a great partner that has a strong, associated demo that over indexes in particular with that audience. And then we try to find unique positioning for Chick-fil-A within the property. Can we position ourselves uniquely? Can we stand out? We don't have a lot of partnerships to where we're exclusive. So from that standpoint, we need to differentiate ourselves. And I think we've done a pretty good job with, the cow as our mascot and as our spokesperson for the brand. And so we've been able to figure out how to execute. And obviously the fan is incredibly important. And a lot of our focus has been on, enhancing the fan experience and working with our properties to see how Chick-fil-A can create value for that fan beyond, what they're coming to see each night in a game or match.
Yeah, we love the cows, right? I think it's one of those unique brand positioning that you see that cow and the way you represent the character, and you know what brand that is. And it's always been a fun way to see how you've integrated it into sports. The first relationship we had dating back, gosh, 12, 13 seasons ago by this point was the foul lane concept and having the cow on the basket pad. But that led to the promotion, right? And driving consumers, our fans, your consumers, back to the restaurants. So through things such as missing a foul shot as an opponent, or in our case, when we hit enough 3-pointers at home, we send fans. It seems to be that's a big pillar of what you're doing to drive traffic and I guess maybe create that fan experience that you just referenced.
It has been. Those assets have created a lot of fan engagement. We have the Chick-fil-A foul poles in some of the Major League Baseball stadiums, and if a home team player hits that foul pole, everyone can typically redeem it for Chick-fil-A. Of course, it's posing some, as great as those things are, it obviously poses some problems in today's times when there's neutral site games and there's no fans in the stands. And so it's just a great reminder for us as to how we've got to be cognizant of a changing environment and be adaptable to those changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big part of what we want to talk about today and come back to. But before we do that, take us back to, I guess it was March, late February, early March. We all had that moment here in the States that this pandemic was going to come and disrupt us quite a bit. What was that moment for you where you realized you're going to go into a work from home environment, not in the office with your team, probably not traveling nearly as much as you used to, and even on the restaurant level?
Well, it started subtly in terms of Chick-fil-A was monitoring the situation, long before mid-March. And we had actually set aside 2 days at the end of that week. I guess it was maybe like the 11th and 12th of March to test remote work from home. And so we were going to test that scenario out and then plan on returning to the office the following Monday. And, as things started to unfold, I was actually headed out Thursday afternoon with my son to attend the SEC basketball tournament in Nashville. So we were heading there. He's a senior at Auburn this fall, and so we had traditionally gone to the SEC basketball tournament. So we were planning to go there for the weekend, and obviously things started to unfold with the cancellations of tournaments. We started to see the realities of what happened with the NBA, and the COVID-19 testing positive, with Rudy Gobert. And so it was like a slowly unfolding dream. Step by step things started to happen, and it wasn't until probably the next week or so that became like more of a long-term reality. I think the initial thought was, hey, it's a pause. It's a state that we're going to have to just be patient with. And it's continued, and we're in month 6 now, I think, of the pandemic, which is just hard to believe, but it's the reality that we've been dealt.
Yeah. And at what point did you start thinking about, okay, that's a great story too, on your way to the SEC championship? I believe, if I'm guessing some dates here, probably about 4 nights prior is when the NBA did have the first initial game shut down and suspension. At what point, as the leader of sports entertainment partnerships, does it click in your head to say, my goodness, I got to really rally from a national perspective, how we adjust and think about navigating this pandemic?
Well, as you can recall, almost everything came to a halt at that point in time. I mean, the NBA was first, then everything else started to fall in place, MLS, MLB. And so it just became, an immediately recognizable situation that, hey, we're going to have to deal with some changes to the sports property landscape. And the hard part was the lack of clarity, because initially there were only, estimations and projections as to when sports might return. And then the longer the time horizon went, the greater the level of uncertainty. And, we had made plans for, we think sports are going to return, on X date, and they didn't, obviously. And so we spent most of our time initially going through scenario planning as to, what it might look like if sports will return. Then we started hearing announcements about bubbles and, things like that. And, MLB was talking about playing in bubbles. And, so we were early to a lot of the conversations with properties, trying to understand, what, if anything, they knew. And I think for most of them, they just didn't know a lot. The plans were incredibly fluid at that point in time. And I think the leagues were just looking through scenarios. And so it was basically a timeline of just waiting. And I think we had about maybe 60 properties that were impacted, starting with college basketball that was currently in season, the college sports season for the spring with baseball and softball and some of the other sports that some of our markets are involved with. They were canceled. So that was a little easier to deal with, because there's a little bit of certainty about they're not going to play a season. The hardest part was the lack of certainty around, will NBA return? Will, MLB start at some point in time? What does all that look like at that point in time?
Yeah. And I know that was our conversation too early on in the process, where I think what we all found is everybody was trying to be as transparent as possible and not try to predict, just deal with what you know. And that was the conversation of, we're not totally sure of what the NBA will look like coming back. Will it be with no fans in your home arena? Will it be in this neutral site setting? So on and so forth. And yeah, it's amazing to look back almost probably at that point 5 months ago, but 6 months into the pandemic, and see where we still are. Talk to us, before we go a little bit deeper on the sports side, on the restaurant side related to your all's business. What can you share on that standpoint from really when, again, March into where we are today, and how you've navigated that?
Well, I think it was a very scary situation for the business because, we didn't know what, government protocols were going to be regarding, restaurants. Were restaurants going to be forced to close like so many other businesses were?
Mm-hmm.
And, we were very blessed in a sense that we've been allowed to stay open and conduct business, although very differently. Our malls, for the most part, were closed across the country as those mall shopping centers closed down. So, we had to look at revamping, the business, and it started with, focusing on our drive-through. And fortunately for Chick-fil-A, we've invested significant time and resources in having one of the fastest and most accurate drive-throughs in the country. And so we leaned heavily on the fact that we had some great systems and processes in place, although they were just going to need to change when you took, the business completely out of the dining room. So, focus was on the drive-through and trying to maximize the throughput. And the focus from the outset was safety of team members, safety of customers, and then, being able to provide for customers and give them the information they needed to let them know, are we open? What hours? How are we conducting business? How can they transact with us? And it really, elevated things like curbside, which was, done through our app, and then delivery ramped up significantly. And so, we were very fortunate that, a number of different teams at Chick-fil-A had done some outstanding work, not in preparation for this by any means, but just having the systems and processes in place. And the app has been critical to our communication with customers.
Yeah. And to that point, this has forced us to speed up some level of innovation because of the disruption that came so quickly. Yet the best brands have been prepared for it without even knowing they were prepared for it. And to your point again on the drive-through, I think that's something we've heard from you all for some time now, in addition to the app, as a critical piece into the next phase of what you all are trying to really excel at. And again, to the credit of the team here, and I can talk all day about the team in Central Florida. I won't name drop anybody, because then I feel like I got to name all 30 plus folks, but they're just great people that run incredible operations. And that was always noticeable, I think, early on, is the drive-through lines at Chick-fil-A were full. And that's never a concern, because you do move so quick. But the perception, and I kept hearing from people, is Chick-fil-A is open, Chick-fil-A is doing well. Even though you can't go in, the drive-throughs are still operational.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't give credit to our franchisees and our team members across the country. I mean, they had to very quickly adapt to the protocols that were required, for restaurant operation. They had to modify their business, really transcend, how they were interacting with many of the customers, with, curbside not being that big of a part of our business, and delivery, just in its infancy stages. And so they did tremendous work, tireless work, to keep, the business operating as smoothly as it has. And so I give them all the credit for the long hours and the work that they've put in.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And that's why you are so successful. We'll go back into the sports side. So I think when we started talking about having this conversation to share with some of our consumers and fans and friends of the industry, your comment was, let's wait to see and understand a little bit more about the comeback of sports, which would give you probably more perspective at that time to understand maybe what's working, what's not, and where does Chick-fil-A layer in? What are the goals, and what's your strategy of marketing around sports in this situation of still social distancing? So before we got on today, we were talking a little bit about how just recently, as we're filming this, the day prior, all sports were going on. from college. It was the first night of NFL. We had an NBA playoff game, a substantial one at that. So now that we're at that point, Keith, what's your perspective? How have you, I guess, start with what you've seen in some of the neutral sites and things that have happened, and what you've appreciated from a partnership perspective.
Well, first, I give a lot of credit to our partners. Everyone has over communicated, which I think was critical in these situations. And even when there wasn't information to share, they acknowledged that and said, hey, we don't have any news. We don't know what we're going to be allowed to do, for our partners. And that was the case for quite some time until plans started to evolve and materialize. And then, our partners have been great in terms of, bringing, the new opportunities to us. NBA, had some different opportunities for partners, in the bubble environment. MLB created some new opportunities. And so everyone, to the extent possible, has tried to be flexible, which I think has been critical at this juncture. And, I think the ultimate goal was to find, the appropriate, place for brands to position themselves in this, new world of how sports were going to be broadcast. And it is incredibly different. And, we've just appreciated the flexibility that the leagues and the properties have given us as a brand to, flex into those environments in unique ways with, Cal sitting in some stands in certain places and things like that. So we try to be innovative. For Chick-fil-A, it has been challenging because the fan experience is critical to a lot of what we do. And so, not having fans in the stands and being able to engage and activate with that fan base through the promotional things that we do and otherwise has been challenged. So we've definitely veered more towards media during this time, because obviously that's the easy medium to transition to. And in some places we've got some unique, brand positioning with cows and other elements.
Well, it gives you, again, that flexibility where you have the fun and innovative way to put the brand in the stands that other brands really can't do. So I guess, is that the approach? You kind of touched on the look back, but also the move forward. Is that the approach, is focusing on media opportunities right now to still engage with that fan base and less about the drive to retail, or restaurant type fan engagement promotions?
It will be. I think the challenge is that it's hard to put a lot of plans in concrete right now, because there's still the reality that something could happen and, disrupt, a league that's playing today. One, outbreak of the virus could be detrimental to, the situation that they're in. And so that's been the most challenging aspect, is to put any longer term plans in place to leverage the properties as we may normally have done.
Have you seen any, I guess I'll call it, media or branding opportunities where there's either tarps on the seats and in our world doing virtual signage? Has any of those changes really kind of sparked some interest in your team to think about, that's how I want to see our brand position?
No, I don't know that it has. I mean, it's great to have the visibility when we're playing outside of a home environment or we're playing without fans. So we appreciate the incremental branding opportunity, but we'd still like for our brand to be more engaged with the fan base, where we've got, cows in the stands in the concourse area. We'd like to have activation and engagement with that fan base at a point of passion in the game. So, the branding has been nice, but it's still not the best fit for Chick-fil-A long-term, at least.
Understood. Yeah. Well, how do you plan then? Like, you think about, 6 months from now, 8 months from now, and you're probably starting to think that way. But even as we sit here in September and college football kickoff should be happening the way it used to, the NBA season will be coming, but not during the normal time frame, so on and so forth. How do you plan for that?
It's incredibly challenging right now, because obviously we have, key messages that we want to put into the marketplace and leverage our partnerships to deliver to fans. And so with that uncertainty of timing, those windows are continuing to move. And obviously, we're waiting to hear, when the NBA will restart. There's a couple different timelines, and that obviously impacts the messaging that we would take into those partnerships. So as it was going into, the return of sports, we'll do a lot of scenario planning in terms of, if the league starts at this point, then this will be the messaging that we'll take into the property, and this is the way that we'll approach it. There's still the unknown factor of, when fans will return in any significant numbers. We saw, the Chiefs played last night with about 16,000 fans in a 70 or 80,000 seat stadium. So, we'll have to put a lot of plans in place that will accommodate, a different level of participation from a fan attendance standpoint. And I think those are the uncertainties that we're just going to have to deal with for the foreseeable future in sports.
Yeah, absolutely. It's well said. And I would say it plays back to another point you made earlier, where it's just constant communication with your properties, and thinking about it thoughtfully moving forward, right? I've found value in talking to you and others on the partnership, in our partnership portfolio, about what would you want us to advocate for with our league or with our arena. And I think that's a big part of it moving forward. We don't want to assume, we never should do that, of what a partner would want without having a conversation to get your feedback. So I think that's been a good thing, seeing the sports industry rally together and constantly think about, well, what would be beneficial, and not doing that in a silo and thinking together on where you go.
Yeah, those aspects of the relationship have been critical in understanding, what our brand needs at this point in time, because it's a little bit different given the circumstances. And I just can't say again how much we've appreciated the flexibility that properties have given us to, redesign and approach the sponsorships differently.
Yeah. What's your, if you think about folks that are watching this that are running a strategy on the brand side for sports partnerships, what's your advice to them?
I mean, I think at this point in time, you're going to have to employ a short-term strategy that extends during the pandemic. We're hopeful that there's a light at the end of the tunnel at some point in time, where there's and I hate this term, but it's what's being used, the new normal, as to how sports are going to be viewed. And then hopefully we get back to a longer-term strategy that's more the norm with which we would approach sports, with venues that have, full capacities of fans. And, so I think it's going to be a mixture of short and long term. And I think everyone's got to have a great deal of flexibility in their perspective and their mindset as to how they approach these properties during this time, because it's just incredibly unique. And I'm not sure I've talked with anyone in the sports industry who's gone through or experienced anything like this. It's unprecedented.
Right. And we keep the tone again is, or the message is, constant communication and flexibility. So on the brand side as well, is there anything you would add to the advice you would give folks that are in my seat, or the team that we have on the property side running partnerships?
Yeah, I think continue to be understanding with some of the challenges that we face. We're not able to, create a lot of creative right now. That's limited in what you can produce in terms of new commercial spots. It's very limited in terms of what we can plan for, given the uncertainty in the environment. And so I think, flexibility and continuing to ask the question as to, what's important to your brand right now, because it's obviously very different during this time than it otherwise would be.
That's incredible. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so last thing, as we think about the world of sports has come back, whatever that means in the sense of the word, but it's come back. Is there anything that you're specifically excited to see, excited to watch for related to sports?
I watch a lot of sports. We were talking earlier about, last night being, the pinnacle of sports broadcasting, with, so many properties being broadcast. So as a sports fan, I think it's great. I think it's challenging because you face a dilution of viewership like we've never seen before, with so much being broadcast at the same time. And so I think that's something that we all need to be cognizant of. But I think just the return of sports, giving people an opportunity to, distance themselves from the pandemic to a certain extent and enjoy, the incredible entertainment value of sports that they have to offer is just a great time. And I think it hopefully will provide people with some sense of a normalcy that I think we all desire at this point in time.
Totally agree. Absolutely. Well, Keith, we at the Magic can't thank you enough. A decade plus partnership with Chick-fil-A and the team that you have both there up in Atlanta and certainly down here in Central Florida have been always incredible to us. So thank you very much for your partnership, and can't thank you enough for sharing today with us in this content series.
been great spending the time with you as well, JT.
Okay. Thank you, Keith.